Now I'd like to introduce your speakers for this session. Today, we're going to hear from Mahalia Baldini, Director of Adult Education and Literacy, and Cindi, Scanlon, and Janice Henschen, Program Specialists for Workforce Board Service Strategies at the Texas Workforce Commission. Thank you.
So good afternoon, everybody. Can everybody hear me in the back? Just real quick and on mic check, and we're good on cameras online. Okay, well, good afternoon. This is always my favorite time to do a session right after lunch. You guys are nice and full and ready to participate, and I'm sure super excited to be here. So I'm thrilled for this session that we're going to be doing today. It's been a long time coming for me personally. I've been wanting to see changes in the choices work rate measure for many, many years, and now it's finally here and we get to talk about it. I wanted to kind of open the session, and I think my co-presenters are actually going to present first, but I wanted to open it up and let you guys know that this is just as much about us putting information out there and really sharing about what are some of the possibilities with an AEL partnership, as much as it is about you guys asking really good questions. That helps us to take those back and build future technical assistance that may be needed, and also when we're developing policy. So feel free to ask questions at the very end. So hopefully you can write those down while we're presenting. And then at the very end, we're going to have some time for some Q&A. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce, I believe, Janice Henschen, who's going to get us started today.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Can everybody hear me in the back? Okay, great. Thanks. Such an honor for me to be here doing this presentation for y'all this afternoon. I am Janice Henschen. I've been with TWC BSS for the last 6 months. Prior to that, I was with Rural Capital Area Workforce Solutions for over 23 years. Prior to that, I've also had experience in the workforce. So it's real exciting to be able to work with Mahalia and AEL and kind of make that transition with working together and establishing a partnership and making it successful, especially for our choices participants. So with that, let's get started. Excuse me, I am having some technical difficulties. It's not showing there. Thank you, Melissa. I see you hitting my way. Say it worked earlier though. It's not, yeah, it's not showing on the screen. Yeah. Okay, let's. Yeah, let's. It still didn't change. It didn't change.
There we go. We're back.
Okay, now we're ready. Okay, thank y'all. So our areas of discussion today includes information on the following. We're going to talk about the Choices Full Engagement Measure and how that changed in BCY 2022. We're going to talk about the expansion of educational and training services and activities and the opportunity opportunities that creates for our choices participants. We're also going to talk about co-enrollments and the co-enrollments of the choices participants and what that looks like in the TWIST program. We're also going to talk about collaborating successfully with our AEL partners for our choices participants' successes. So let's look a little closer at the choices full engagement measure. The methodology for the choices full engagement measure includes the denominator and the numerator. The denominator is all choices employment expected families and any other families from the numerator. The monthly performance is calculated by dividing each month's numerator by the month's denominator to establish the month's performance rate. Performance for multiple months is calculated by averaging monthly performance. And remember, in TWIST, the web report that we can utilize to find out what the choices full engagement measure is the TWIST Workforce Report number 14. That will identify who's in your numerator, who's in your denominator. It will give you the percentage. You can run that report on a monthly basis to determine what your choices full engagement measure is for the month. You can also do it for the year to date. So the choices full engagement measure changes was helpful in making our choices participants have more opportunities and finding different ways to work with them for their successes. So what they did with the full engagement measure is they added some new services to that measure to count towards the choices full engagement measure. We're going to look at each one of those, but the new ones that were added are occupational vocational training, basic education skills, ABE, community service, English as a second language, entrepreneurial training, work-based literacy, and other work experience opportunities. The services that continue to count towards the choices full engagement measure are on-the-job training, unsubsidized self-employment, unsubsidized employment, subsidized employment, high school equivalency, and middle school. The expansion into educational and training activities creates more opportunities for our choices participants. The dialogue starts with working with the individuals when we first meet with them, that initial assessment. When you're meeting with that customer for that initial assessment, you want to make sure that you're having an intensive evaluation or assessment with that customer. It's critical to complete a thorough assessment to ensure that the best outcomes occurs for our choices participants. Accurately identifying the customer's existing barriers, for example, if they have educational needs or training needs, if they have basic ed needs or maybe a language barrier. We want to make sure that we're identifying that because those are critical components in ensuring employment success. Remember, during the family employment planning session, when you have your customers sitting there, you're going to be developing that family employment plan with them. The choices participant is going to help develop and agree upon a planned course of action. And this is going to have different strategies and ideas and a plan for them to follow to lead towards success. And when you're doing that with your customer, that educational and training needs can be outlined on that plan. An array of education and training programs can have a positive effect on the choices participants. Some of the outcomes include achieving certifications, upskilling, and improving their employment earnings. Some already employed choices participants may be able to find better paying jobs. Leverage funding is also a useful and additional resource. Co-enrollment in choices participants in WIOA can result in positive employment outcomes. Now let's talk about an essential tool. You may have heard of this before. It's called the service matrix. Let's discuss some highlights of the service matrix. Remember, the service matrix is a compilation of all the services, the definitions of the services, different codes, the different programs that can be used, and it's for the data entry in the TWIST program. So you can use the service matrix when you're selecting your appropriate choices activities that meet the needs of your choices participants. It contains the descriptions and service activity codes to assist staff in maintaining the accuracy of TWIST data. This is a nice reminder to remember all allowable choices services are listed on that service matrix, but not all of the services count towards the choices full engagement measure. Now let's look at educational and training service activities and how the expansion into those different areas has created more opportunities for our choices participants. Let's look at the activities of basic ed skills, HSE, and English as a second language. Basic educational skills and ABE are activities designed to enhance the employability of the job seeker by upgrading basic skills. Basic education skills training that does not occur in an employment setting. High school equivalency, Service 54. We use that for job seekers without a high school degree or HSE who are attending HSE classes as a training service conducted in an institutional setting designed to enable an individual to pass an HSE exam. English as a second language. Activities are designed to enhance the English speaking ability of non-native speakers. Additional services are high school, Service 53, work-based literacy, Service 87, and occupational vocational training, Service 1. For high school, we use that activity for teen heads of households and adults without high school diplomas or GEDs who are attending high school. For work-based literacy, it's tied to employment. For occupational vocational training, it's training conducted in an institutional setting that provides specific technical skills and knowledge required for a specific job or group of jobs and results in the attainment of a certificate. Now let's look at how you can stack activities using AEL services. Our AEL providers are knowledgeable and available and able to assist our choices participants. I want to call your attention to the first example of Mary. Mary is a choices participant. She is employed part-time as a custodian at Washington Elementary School. Her employment hours are 3 hours per day, Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Mary tells her case manager that she feels that her language barrier and her lack of a high school diploma is the reason why she is unable to find a better job. Mary's case manager discusses with Mary available options that are provided by the local AEL provider. Mary's case manager informs Mary that ESL participation hours and HSE hours will both count towards her participation requirement. AEL staff meet with Mary and assist her in enrolling in an ESL program 3 hours per day, Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. to noon, and a high school equivalency program 3 hours per day, Monday through Thursday, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Mary stacks service activities of employment, ESL, and HSE totaling 39 hours per week will allow her to maintain participation. Mary is on her way to reaching her fullest potential and achieving a sustainable employment outcome. Example 2 is Sarah. Sarah is also a choices participant with a child under the age of 6. Her monthly participation requirement to meet participation requirements for May is 89 hours. Sarah is employed part-time at Alice's daycare as a child care provider assistant. She works 3 hours per day, Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Sarah tells her case manager that her employment goal is to find a job in child development, but that she does not have a high school diploma or a GED. Sarah's case manager informs Sarah that HSE hours will count towards her participation requirement. AEL staff meet with Sarah and assist her in enrolling in an HSE GED class, 4 hours per day, Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. to noon. Sarah's stacked service activities of employment and HSE totaling 31 hours per week will allow her to maintain participation. Sarah is meeting participation and working towards earning her GED. Next, I'd like to go over the benefits of co-enrollments and tracking those co-enrollments in TWIST. The benefits of co-enrolling. Co-enrolling ensures an individual's barriers are addressed by providing appropriate services. And that could be training, support services, etc., to achieve a successful employment outcome. Co-enrolling provides choices participants with a variety of options for programs and services. It enables choices participants to meet choices performance requirements while also working towards reaching their own goals. It also allows for leveraging of funding and resources. Now let's look at tracking co-enrollments in TWIST. In this example, we're going to talk about is a participant that's co-enrolled in WIOA and choices, similar to what we were discussing with Sarah and Mary. When you have a co-enrolled individual that's co-enrolled in choices and in WIOA, you're going to see that there's a TWIST program that's open for WIOA. You're also going to see that choices open program detail. And when you're working with your customers that are co-enrolled, you want to keep in mind for TWIST case management that you establish a lead case manager that meets with the customer, collects documentation, enters services with the appropriate funding in TWIST, and enters case notes as appropriate. And when I was mentioning earlier about the program details, you're also going to see the services. So when you have an individual that's co-enrolled, you're going to see the services under the funding for choices, and you're going to see the services under the funding for the WIOA program if that's your co-managed partner. In this example, it depicts Mary's scenario. And remember, Mary was in choices and co-enrolled in WIOA. And the services that she was in for choices was high school equivalency, English as a second language, and then unsubsidized employment. For WIOA, we can see she was also co-enrolled with them in high school equivalency. This depicts Sarah's example. Remember, she was choices co-enrolled in WIOA. And in this depiction, we can see that Sarah was in choices. She was enrolled in service 39, which is unsubsidized employment. She was also enrolled in 54, which is high school equivalency. And if we look at it closer, we'll see that 54 high school equivalency is also what WIOA has her enrolled in. Now let's look at collaborating with AEL for successful outcomes, keeping our participants in mind. So when we're working together with AEL for our participants' successes, best tips and practices would be to assign a lead case manager, always keep the participant in mind and stay customer focused, one appointment to address everything like supportive services, barriers, participation hours, updating TWIST, know your local policies, stay informed of available and allowable supportive services and eligibility requirements. Be informative, be knowledgeable of your area's training limitations. What are your local policies within your board area? Know your local AEL referral process. How do you make that connection with your AEL provider? Is there someone there in the workforce center? Is there a telephone number that you need? Is there an email? Make those connections. Connect with your local AEL staff and establish a solid working relationship for information sharing. Know the available trainings and providers under AEL and contact information to refer participants for AEL services. If AEL is not housed in your area, then invite your partners into your centers where they can have workshops. They can present presentations or workshops. They can have meetings with your customers. Encourage your choices participants to attend these workshops with AEL if they have educational or training needs. Provide choices participants with AEL informational brochures and flyers. Put them in the resource room so they're available for all the universal customers that come in. Coordinate one-on-one sessions with AEL advisors as needed for participants' individualized educational or training needs. And share in the participant successes with your teams, your workforce solutions teams, and your AEL teams. On this slide, I wanted to call your attention to some helpful resources for choices and for AEL services. At this time, we will hold the questions until we've concluded the presentations. I want to thank you for your attention and let you know that you can reach out to us at choicestechnical@twc.texas.gov. We look forward to hearing from you. And thank you for joining us.
Okay, let me make a couple adjustments here, and I'm going to switch over to my PowerPoint, and hopefully we don't have as much as we did last time in terms of issues here. How's everybody doing? You guys still with me? Yay! So I think Janice had the hardest part today in preparing her slides because they're pretty technical, and she has to really get down into the weeds to kind of talk about all the things that you guys have to do in order to track it and what's appropriate. I get to the fun job. I get to talk about something that I love to talk about. Let me get started here. Okay, here we go. Here we go, folks. What is going on? Why is this not going on? Okay. Oops. No, slideshow. Okay, well, here's the trick, folks. If anybody else has to do this after me, you got to close it down, then you got to reopen it, and then you close it again, and then you reopen it again, and then you're in business. Okay, so just to get started, just so I have an idea of sort of who's in the room today, how many of you are with board staff? Board staff, okay. What about contractor staff, workforce contractor staff? Okay, most of you. And I'm gonna say AEL because I know I got at least one right here, my little ringer down here in the front with Laredo College. What about VR? Do we have any VR folks in here? Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us. As they were introduced, my name is Mahalia Baldini. I'm the State Director for Adult Education and Literacy here in Texas, and I've been doing this for about 2 years. But in a previous life, I was a Choices program lead working for a contractor at the local level. And so when I opened up and I kind of said, hey, I've been waiting a really long time for this to happen, I really do mean it. So I'm very thrilled to be doing this presentation with you today, and I'm happy to talk about AEL and what we have to offer in this partnership. So for those of you that maybe work specifically in Choices and maybe don't kind of know what that workforce system looks like under WIOA specifically. So there are 4 titles. We have Title I, which you're probably very familiar with. We are actually Title II under WIOA. That means essentially that we have all the same performance. So I think there's this vicious rumor out there that AEL doesn't have the same performance as WIOA. Credentials, MSGs, we have all the same performance, and we have to report them jointly. So I think it's important that when I'm talking about everything that I'm going to be talking and sharing with you today, that you kind of understand that that is what we are after as well. And so we put a lot of focus on the quality of the services that we're doing, because we're always trying to get our customers to the end goal in meeting those performance outcomes. Specifically in Title II, what are we charged with doing? So basically serving basic skills deficient, I'm going to define that for you. Individuals and English language learners in support of literacy, reading, math, high school equivalencies, writing, and of course, fluency. But we also have a focus on transitioning to post-secondary education. We, unlike the boards, are not a formula grant or a block grant. We do a statewide competition every 5 years. So if you want our money, you've got to compete for it against some other very qualified individuals in the state. It's about an $80 million investment that we make every single year. So every year those monies get refreshed out to the individuals that we've awarded through our competitive grant. And we have a variety of instructional options, which I'm going to share with you today. A lot of people think we're the GED program and we're the ESL program. And that's a large part of what we do, but we offer so much more. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about those other services as well. And of course, we're free, low cost to all of our customers. When we're looking at the provider system in Texas and trying to figure out maybe what's happening in your neck of the woods when it comes to AEL providers, hopefully you already know who they are. But I would suspect, as any partnerships, that really take a lot of nurturing, those things can tend to fall at the wayside, and we have to, like any relationship, continue to nurture them. So in terms of our AEL providers, this is what it shakes out. A lot of another rumor is that AEL is, these nonprofit organizations across Texas. Actually, most of our grants are awarded through the community college system. So we have most of our money actually in the community colleges there, and those colleges have very specific funds available that really outreach and specifically target individuals who are basic skills deficient, don't have a high school diploma, but want to go to college. We also have 5 ISDs. We have 4 workforce boards. They are Gulf Coast, Brazos Valley, Dallas, and Tarrant. All have AEL grant recipients, and then have sub-recipients that they work with to perform the actual services for our grant. We also have some educational service centers that we have around the state. The good news is that we are in every single board area. So when you apply for the fund, you're going to have at least one AEL partner in your area. So when I'm talking about the services today, you can make that connection and know that these are services that are there and available within your communities. Okay, so who do we serve? We do serve people that do not have a high school diploma. Again, we are a GED, and I say GED now because they're the only state or the only test in the state. We used to have a couple that we use like HiSET, but we're back to only having GED here in Texas. That is a decision that's made by the Texas Education Agency, not the Texas Workforce Commission. But we also serve individuals that already have a high school diploma, and that is important when you're considering ABE classes and how you're really working with your Choices customers. If you have a Choices customer that has a high school diploma, but they take a TABE and they're reading at a 6th grade level, chances are if you put them into a workforce training, may not be successful by themselves. But with the partnership of AEL in an integrated design, which I'm going to share with you, all of a sudden the prospects for that customer become, much better. So we also serve, of course, English as a second language learners. Many of the folks, and you guys may find this too, if you start asking questions like we did a couple of years ago, for individuals that are on public assistance, for individuals that are coming in to seek our services, many of them are internationally trained professionals. So they don't speak the language, but hey, they're doctors, they're lawyers, they're engineers in their home country, and they come here and they're washing dishes and they find themselves on public assistance. But that's a great opportunity to have a good partnership with your AEL provider because we have very specialized services for that group and that population. So why is it important? Well, other than the fact that it's just probably really good customer service to provide a holistic approach to moving someone through a guided pathway into a better opportunity. When we look at the numbers statewide, I asked our folks over in board service strategies. I had to practice that. Board service strategies, when I asked them about what do the numbers currently look like. So this is kind of the things when we're looking at the last 2 years in terms of our Choices customers. So Choices customers who lack a high school diploma or an equivalent, back in pre-pandemic years, do y'all even remember that? I feel like we crammed 10 years into 2 years when we started doing the pandemic. but we had about a little over 10,000 Choices customers in total. And there was about 24% of them that lacked a high school diploma or an equivalent. So that's a good portion of that population. But I bet if you also took and looked at all of the TABE tests identified the ones that were English limited proficient, that percentage would go way up. So it's not just about individuals that are lacking that high school diploma. It's also about their ability to read, write, and do math on the job, right? Because we still want to get them employed. But in order to be successful in employment, you have to be able to read. You have to be able to write. You have to be able to communicate. You need digital literacy skills. All of those are services that we provide. Flash forward to the middle of the pandemic, even though we served a lot fewer Choices customers, the percentage of those without a high school diploma went up. People lost their jobs. Everyone knows when you don't have a high school diploma, it's much harder to get re-employed, right? We all know that. It's kind of the business that we're in. So those numbers went up slightly due to the pandemic. When you're looking at Choices customers across the state who are limited English, you have about 7% pre-pandemic and then up to 9% during the pandemic. So that also increased. Again, people are losing their jobs. They're going on public assistance. How many of you saw people coming in that were on public assistance maybe for the first time or hadn't been on public assistance maybe in a while? We had heard through various channels that we had new customers coming on to public assistance during the pandemic, just because they had lost their jobs and they found themselves kind of in a new situation. So adult education does many wonderful things, and I love the program, so I could talk about it all day. But some of the specific things I think you want to consider when you're really thinking about our Choices customer and their levels of literacy. And when I really think about levels of literacy, I'm not talking about just reading. It's also writing and math and communication and digital literacy. All of those things play into the factor of the success for that individual and the amount of earnings that they will make in their lives and over time. And also what types of career pathways they really can get on and stay on. So what are the impacts to society for illiteracy? Well, poverty is one of them. There are studies out there in direct correlation that if you are illiterate to a certain level, you have a higher percent will be on public assistance. Lack of employment. You lose your job, it's harder for you to get a job, it's harder for you to find a job. Maybe not in today's market because everybody's hiring, right? If you're a warm body, you could probably get a job doing something. Health and disease, low levels of literacy cost the US billions of dollars every single year. Because if you think about it, if you can't read above a 3rd grade or 5th grade level, and you go and you have a medical concern, they give you a big old packet of paper that's about this big, and they say, read this and follow up and do these instructions. Well, there's a lot of terminology in there that if you are a second language learner or a low literacy individual, you don't know what that says. So how could you possibly do it? So it leads to continued health issues, it leads to chronic health issues, and it costs the US billions. Productivity loss, if you think about our employers that are kind of out there and they're hiring individuals, and hopefully our Choices customers are some of them, but they have those lower levels of literacy. They get hurt on the job more often than those that don't. That's probably because they have a safety manual that they're supposed to read, and not only read, but also comprehend and understand, and be able to sort of project that intrinsically while they're working. So crime and incarceration, statistically, 70% of the individuals in juvenile justice or have involvement in juvenile justice have basic prose literacy, which is somewhere around the 5th grade. So there's all kinds of things when we're talking about literacy, and I think the importance of adult education and having a strong partnership with adult education. But I'm going to kind of speak to the things that you guys are like, hey, we're on technical assistance plans. We're trying to figure out this performance, right? Like, how do we help each other out? So I want to talk about co-enrollment, true co-enrollment between the board and adult education. So last year, starting July 1st of 20 through June of 21, there were a total of how many choices customers do you guys think there were? How many of you think it was maybe 1,000? Anybody? 800? No, 43. And that is statewide. So 43 total customers were taking advantage of adult education and literacy between this time frame. So not a lot. So that's kind of why we're doing sessions like this today. And we're talking about it because we hope that in the future is if we're providing information, you guys will feel a little better about going out there and creating and being innovative with the choices that you're making for your customers. So what are the services? Some of the services that we offer, everybody knows GED, everybody knows English as a second language, but we also do several of the other activities that Janice mentioned that are on there. So GED, high school equivalency, English as a second language, workplace literacy, we do that one. We also pay for occupational training in a very specific model, which I'm going to talk to you guys about. And we really focus all of our students to have career pathways. And maybe that is one of the prime motivators for working with an AEL partner. Because when we get a customer into our system, our goal is going back to WIOA again. What do we want to see? We want to see an MSG, which means we want to see an improvement in literacy. Whether that's reading, math, language, communication, some form of a measurable skills gain. We want to, if a customer goes into training, we want them to be successful. We have to get a credential from that individual. So we have to be very supportive of individuals that we put into training and that we pay for training. And that would include any referrals from for choices. And the reason for that is because if you take someone that has a lower level of literacy, lacks a high school diploma, and you put them in training, there are certain supports that have to be in place for that person to be successful. And there's just a statewide need, which is why the partnership makes a lot of sense. So here in Texas, we're trying to speed our lower skilled Texans into targeted high demand occupations. You guys know that. The resolution for that in terms of how AEL is helping to support that is called an integrated education and training model. An integrated education and training model does a couple of things. What it really does is focuses on everybody can have access to training. So think about that. If you're an English second language learner, you can have access to training. If you don't have a high school diploma, you can have access to training. If you are a low level of literacy, math, you can have access to training. And the reason why we can do that and we feel confident about it is because our AEL providers, like Miss Sandra Cortez here in the front, has been spending the last 5 years developing models that support those students. So while they are in training Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, they are getting AEL support that is specifically designed and contextualized to that training on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So if you're going to a class and you're learning how to be a welder, that workforce trainer is not going to teach you how to add and subtract fractions. That's not their job. That's AEL's job. So we want those students to be successful. So we provide those support mechanisms for that student throughout their training, because the end goal is the same for all of us. We want them to earn a credential and get a high paying job and get off public assistance and hopefully not boomerang back into our program. So when we're talking about the ways that we can help high school equivalency attainment, sure, that is one of them. And right now we have a free voucher program that is happening right now. We got some funds through the Texas legislature and the Texas Education Agency. And so we have funding right now to pay for high school equivalency vouchers for our customers. So it's another, good opportunity to create a referral process, because there's no out of cost expense for the customer, and it doesn't have to come out of the choices budget either, because we have those vouchers available. English language acquisition. All of our English language classes isn't just about fluency. It's a big part of what we do, but we want to make sure that it's fluency to work or fluency to entering into post-secondary education. And then the last one is that integrated education training model that I really talked about. Now, guys, I come up here and I say, oh yeah, this IET, it's going to save the world. And it's true. It's an amazing model. And if you do it well and implement it well, it can be very beneficial. But it does take partnership, and it does take a nurturing relationship and sitting down and doing some thoughtful planning. That model works best probably in a cohort-based design. So when you guys are thinking and you're having students come in or having your choices customers come in that really want to go into healthcare, that really want to go into a specific field, having a cohort-based model so that you can set up and work with your AEL partner to get that going is going to be the best case scenario, but it doesn't have to be the only way that we can do this. The reason why the career pathways model works so well, again, is that you're providing this sort of wraparound support for the student, and you're giving them access to training, to a credential, to a license or a certification so that they can have a better wage. It's very hard to sell to a choices customer, hey, I need you to get a job, and you're going to be making $8 an hour and you're going to lose your public assistance. But if we can give them a 6-month short-term training certificate and they're making $15 an hour, then maybe that's something that can help to motivate an individual to go into training. Now with the job market the way it is in a lot of places, they can make $15 an hour pretty much anywhere, but it won't always be that way. You guys that have been in this for a long time know it's just going to keep cycling. So we won't always be where we are, and we're trying to set our customers up for success long term. And so some of the keys to success and what we're really thinking about, obviously coordination is one of them. A warm body on both sides. So it's not just, oh, here you go, here's your AEL provider, and you give them a phone number or, an email or something, but you actually have a partnership with someone on the other side of the aisle that you can call them up and say, I'm sending Jane over, when's your next orientation? You have to have the warm body. It has to be a warm referral. The other thing is data system access. So the boards that have very close partnerships with their AEL providers that have put programs like this into practice, and we are seeing success with them, really focus on having a person that has an AEL person that has access to Twist and a board person that has access to our system, because we're cutting out the middleman. So we're both entering data on our systems. Hey, did this person go to class? Did this person get their hours? Well, look it up, pull it down. You have the documentation that you need. Participants' knowledge and how we share our data. Obviously, we have to let the participant know what we're doing and how this partnership works and how we're sharing that information. That's going to help to create the vessel that we can build a partnership that's a little bit more of a two-way street. And so we're each getting what we need from a data perspective and a performance perspective. And no duplication, which is the best, right? So whatever supportive services and wraparound services that student needs, we have those. We can see them in a system. So we're not duplicating our efforts. There are a lot of things that the boards have to offer that we can't pay for in adult education, and maybe vice versa. So a couple of things just to consider before we open it up for questions here is maybe consider having an AEL person at your WOA, or ask them to do a canned video where they're really talking about the services that they have. And the services that they can offer. And I say at the WOA because that's the place where you get the most people coming in. It's all the applicants, whether they ever get TANF, they don't get TANF, they're exempt, they're mandatory, whatever. Because we want to work and have a partnership so that anyone that is even applying for public assistance knows about our services. The other thing is eligibility forms. Now, eligibility forms, if you have a customer and you're saying, here, fill this out for me, and then you're sending them and say, oh, fill this out for them, and oh, go over here and fill this out, it's too much. It's just too much, especially for an individual that may have, again, low basic skills, low literacy skills. So in that partnership, I would really say, look at what the requirements are for each of the programs and develop a form that makes sense so that we can share it between yourselves. I can say from our side, we'll be very flexible. If my AL providers call me and say, hey, the board has to collect this other information, is it okay if we use a form? I'm going to be very receptive to that. So don't duplicate those efforts either. Considering a Docusign Packet, Tarrant rolled this out very successfully between their Title I and Title II program up there, where they have their participants go through a Docusign mechanism. They fill out one form, and that form is shared between the partners. So an individual isn't having to fill out multiple forms. And a shared service plan. In adult education, we call that an ITEC plan. It stands for Individual Training, Education, and Career Plan. And then I think on the board side, you guys still call it an IEP, right? So those are just things that we can work out. So we're not duplicating those things, but maybe we can share those things. That way the customer really feels like, you know, there's a partnership there and they're not getting bounced around. So those are my words of wisdom today for you guys. I wanted to open it up for any questions that you may have. We have a microphone in the back.
Hi, Mahalia. It's nice to meet you.
Hello.
A question that I do have for you is you mentioned that you guys have those free vouchers for anybody getting their GED. How long are those available?
They're available through all of our AL providers across Texas have a certain number of vouchers. And the way that those are set up is that when the end of, so I want you guys to know exactly what a customer would experience if they come in. So you would refer them to your AL provider. Once they go there, they're going to get assessed. They're going to get a pre-test to determine, are they really ready to take the test? If they're not, they would enroll them in AL services until they are ready. Vouchers are a precious thing, so we don't want to waste, obviously, them on individuals that may not be ready. But it's 21 and up. Okay, so that's an important eligibility criteria. So 21 years of age and up, and we will pay up to the cost of one full exam for a customer. So for some of individuals coming in, maybe they've already had a couple of subtests or something like that, and they only need their math test. Well, they may be able to take that math test multiple times with our voucher program if they need to.
Thank you.
Yes.
You mentioned those that come in and take the TABE and they've scored poorly, but they still have their high school diploma. Is there like a, with WIOA, if they're testing below 8.9, we consider them basic skills. Would we use that same premise for choices, or is there another target we should be looking at?
I'm glad you asked that question, Stacy. In adult ed, we, basic skills deficient has very specific parameters for Title I. In adult ed, if you're reading, below the 12th grade level, you're basic skills deficient. And I think you have to think about the purpose of the funding. We want individuals to be able to go into post-secondary education and stand on their own. So reading at a 9th grade level for Title I may be acceptable, but in AL, we'll take anybody that's reading, below a 12th grade level. And we consider that basic skills deficient. Good question. Anybody else? Any questions for Janice or Cindi? You're gonna get them. You're gonna get them next week. Don't worry. Maybe tomorrow. Well, if you guys have any questions, here's our information. You can certainly send us some questions too, or contact your board service strategies person. We really want this to be successful. Let us know how we can make that happen for you. If you have any questions, if you want more TA events, joint TA events, we can talk about it more. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you guys have a wonderful afternoon.